beating Malta, ranked 155th in the world by a single goal. So plenty to discuss. Let's get more with sports writer and regular CNN.com contributor Ravi Ubar and Dr. Ralph Rogers, a consultant at the London Sports Injury Clinic. Ravi, let's start with you first. Is fatigue an excuse? Is this the reason behind these shock results?
You know, Alex, I think we often have this notion about athletes being invincible, the fact that also they make a lot of money, so they should be performing every game. But you know what? They are not robots. They're just like us. They need a break, you know, after big tournaments. Joachim Löw was talking about that, in fact, yesterday. So that's one thing to consider. I also think that if we talk about the mental fatigue, it's not only playing after the World Cup, let's say in Germany's case, but also, listen, this qualifying campaign, the top two in each group advanced to the Euros. 24 teams going to be the tournament. So you know what? Do the teams have the foot on the gas at this point in time, early in the qualifying campaign? I'm not so sure, but as we go to the end of qualifying, you would expect, you know, the top teams to kind of coast to make it through.
Yes, interesting. Dr. Ralph, you fix them when they're broke. How tough is it for these players to play, you know, I'm not talking once a week, but when they suddenly get a big fixture jam?
What's really interesting is I've always called for, been my suggestion to have a winter break because, you know, we've seen in England that, you know, a lot of these guys peter out towards the end. But then there's a debate, well, you know, NBA players play 80 games and they're flying all over the United States. How much pressure are they under? And they come out every single week, twice a week sometimes. And then you have tennis players who play, you know, 50, 60 tournaments, you know, 4 hours at a time. Are these guys fit enough? So there's a debate all over, and everybody always has to complain, I'm tired, I'm tired. But I think in football there are different physicalities that we have to look at. And a lot of these players are tired. I mean,
how does it affect the body? What about
the mental issue?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing. You know, like Raheem Sterling, was he 19, 20 years old? It's kind of young, you know, week in and week out. So not only can he be physically tired, I mean, because he's still growing into his body, he can be also mentally tired.
And if he's mentally tired, does that going to affect his body? Is he going to start feeding those twinges or not get his body in the right position? Are the biomechanics going to break down?
When you're mentally tired, you tend to make mental mistakes. Mental mistakes can lead to physical mistakes, and that's what causes injury.
Yeah. And do you think there's much sympathy amongst football fans, Ravi? Because they're going to look at players and how much they're paid and say, you're playing a game.
Not much. You know, if we talk about Sterling, I think that could be more to do with club versus country, because now Brendan Rodgers is in an interesting position. Is he going to play Sterling this weekend? You'd think that he'd want to play Sterling this weekend because he's such a key part of the team. That's number one. But going back to the fatigue factor, as much as I said that, you know, these players need a break, Iker Casillas in the game against Slovakia, his goal, or the goal that he allowed, was basically a big blunder. He didn't play much last season at all for Real Madrid. Didn't have a good World Cup. They didn't play that many games. So was it for him a case of fatigue? I don't think so.
And the interesting thing as well, Ravi, is that when you talk about standards improving, I know you've looked at Iceland. People will say, well, Iceland were there for the taking. How have they come to win? I guess you know some of the answer.
Well, you know what? They have a lot of very, very good qualified coaches. I spoke to the assistant of the national team a couple of years ago. He mentioned that. That's number one. And they've always played pretty well, kind of underage tournaments, 2011 under-21 European Championship. So they always thought that the Euro 2016 would be the tournament they'd qualify for. They were close at the World Cup making the playoffs in terms of Europe.
So suddenly they think these are easy matches and these players have to step up and perform. And if you're sort of in the mental attitude that this is going to be a bit of a stroll and suddenly you're finding during the heat of competition you need to bring out your best game, is that hard for athletes to adapt to?
Yeah, and I think Ravi makes an excellent point. Some of these teams are actually becoming better, and you can't take for granted the Icelands anymore because actually they want to compete against the big games. And sometimes you bring your best game, you bring your A game to these big countries, and you can show them, look, we can compete with you, and that's what it's all about. So is it an excuse? I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of an excuse, but I think if you're that good and you're 30 places ahead of the other team, you gotta bring your game.
I tell you what, it's an interesting debate, and I've really enjoyed speaking to you guys about it. It's not going to go away anytime soon, is it? Dr. Ralph Rogers, Ravi Ubar, thank you so much for your time. Now,